Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be getting into all things Casper and also having a look at the wider market in general. And we're also going to be taking a bit of a step back and looking at how this cycle and also the prior cycles have played out in terms of new people coming into the space and basically the initiation that they have to go through in order to really make it in crypto. So before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe and also turn on post notifications so that you don't miss any of my future videos. So first of all, having a look at Casper. Now, from a TA point of view, Casper is very much back from the dead, and currently we are entering a pretty insanely bullish setup because currently Casper has either broken or is currently testing basically all of the longer term resistance trend lines that we had to break. So first of all, this one was the first real confirmation of the uptrend, and really the first real indication that this move is likely to resolve much higher to the upside. Arguably you could have seen this resistance trend line as the first, but this was a relatively steep trend line, and it's kind of been following this major sell-off that we had in the sort of October period. And in general, the steeper the trend line, the less confidence that you can have that when it is broken, that actually confirms a reversal and a move to the upside is coming. Purely the reason for that is because with a trend line sort of this steep, eventually you are going to have some sort of reversal, even if it's kind of a counter-trend bounce within a longer term sell-off. But even in crypto, an asset can't sell off at this rate forever. So the fact that we have broken this trend line, which was both longer term and also at a more favorable angle, and then had this retest of this trend line, and then are putting in some really nice moves to the upside from that retest, this is an extremely bullish setup. And basically all the key things that I've been looking for to really confirm this move have now been met. So first of all, we have broken this lower high within the prior downtrend that we have had. So while there was clearly a defined uptrend in the short term time frame with some higher highs being put in here, well, now we have had a confirmed higher high on the longer term time frame. And as well as that, we have also taken out some very key resistance levels, looking at kind of the 18 cent level, which was always going to cause us a little bit of a pullback and a little bit of a problem getting through. Well, the fact that we have now broken that level to the upside is a very bullish signal. And really the last major trend line that I am looking at is this one, and it depends somewhat on how you draw it, but arguably this is the level that we experienced our prior rejection of and came down from. And I think realistically, however you draw it, we broke this level and are currently sitting just above this trend line. So whether we hold this trend line as support and maybe continue slightly higher and then come down for another retest of the trend line and then kind of grind our way higher, or if we do peak back down below it and kind of come up for another retest, maybe building a little bit of a base around the sort of 17.5 area. But either way, Casper looks primed here, and I don't think all-time highs and price discovery are too far away from this point. But regardless, this trend line should be really a key one to watch here, because other than that, there really isn't a lot above us now preventing us from reaching price discovery. Now, there is still the argument that this kind of overall pattern here basically is a distribution, but again, I've gone over why I do think that that is a relatively unrealistic scenario in this situation, with really one of the main ones being that in order for this area here to be a distribution, and this kind of 9 months to really 1 year range that we have been in, that would mean that smart money and institutional investors would have had to have been getting in here and then distributing their asset and their coins to retail and to dumb money in this area here. But it's very unlikely that smart money have been getting in here when Casper was less than $1 billion asset, because a $1 billion asset with the amount of money that smart money and institutional players are working with, it's not really even worth looking at a $1 billion asset, because the amount of money they are working with, there's not enough liquidity or really order depth in a $1 billion asset to make it worth their while. So that, and coupled with the fact that the fundamentals and the forward-looking fundamentals for Casper are unbelievably bullish, with 10 blocks per second not too far around the corner at this point, as well as the fact that we are entering the stage of the bull market where altcoins put in some of their highest amount of gains, or at least based on historical patterns and historical trends. I do think it is a lot more likely that this area and this period here and this period here has in fact been basically a reaccumulation instead of a distribution. And so if we do have a look at a reaccumulation schematic here, it's not always the most intuitive thing to be able to tell the difference between a reaccumulation and a distribution. For example, if you were looking kind of purely at this part of the chart, you certainly wouldn't be a complete idiot for thinking that this potentially looks like a distribution schematic. But when you overlay this schematic against what Casper really really have been doing for the past few months, that there definitely is an argument to be made that this has been basically one long accumulation and that we will in fact be resolving to the upside. And so, if we do continue to follow sort of similar to this schematic, then likely we have some sort of slightly choppy period here, kind of at the prior all-time high range, and then we resolve violently to the upside. And generally in these schematics, you should be targeting a move higher that has been basically at least as big as the prior range that you've been in. So when we look at the prior range, this has been around a 116% range or so. So if we take that logic and assume the next move to the upside is going to be somewhat similar to that, then we are potentially looking at the next move to the upside taking us to around the sort of 40 to 44 cent range. And this is all on the backdrop of Bitcoin dominance basically breaking down and putting in really the biggest move that it's had really 2.5 years since sort of summer of 2022, and very much has taken out a lot of the longer term trend lines that were kind of propping it up. So more than likely this spells the top for Bitcoin dominance this cycle and us entering the period in which alts are going to outperform Bitcoin. So now we're going to talk around the fact that Casper still very much is its own unique asset and still trades very differently to the rest of the altcoin market, because basically all of the altcoins had a very similar sort of look to them, where they put in this peak in early 2024, then had this sell off into the end of 2024, and then obviously now have started to put in some outsized gains. And some of them are performing better than others, with them coming in for a peak, having a sell off, and then this point here, and this move that started really in September 2024 actually broke all-time highs and then continuing even higher to the upside. And then some really are putting in some much more lackluster performances, with this bounce being really a lot weaker and then potentially not even breaking the high from that bounce. So Tau, for example, is a very good example of an asset that is performing very well and is showing good relative strength. And if you hide the actual price chart of Tau, then you can see that kind of the yellow squiggle that we're working with shows good relative strength and likely is an indication that Tau is going to do very well this cycle. Whereas if we're looking for something that looks a little bit more like the top squiggle, then Sui is kind of fulfilling that role and looks a little bit more like the top squiggle. So obviously we had this move here, then the sell off, and then the bounce that came for Sui did actually put in a slight all-time high against the previous one, and it then basically rotted out of that and is showing incredible relative strength against the rest of the market. So purely looking at relative strength, that is an indication that sort of Sui and Tau are going to be doing very well this cycle. Whereas looking at a few others, they are slightly further away from their all-time highs and kind of didn't really do much in this bounce, and then are still basically playing catch up with the market leaders such as Tau and Sui. And that's especially true looking at kind of the blue chip cryptos or some of the survivors from the prior cycle. So Link may be actually looking all right here, kind of has actually broken the high of this local high that we were talking about. It still has a ways to go until all-time high, but likely it will be getting there. Con again showing decent relative strength, but still has a little ways to go until all-time high. But one thing that you will notice is that the charts of a lot of meme coins are looking very strong right now, and I do actually expect a lot of these assets to do pretty well into kind of the peak euphoria of the crypto bull run. Now obviously there will be some winners and there will be some losers, but in general memes should do pretty well, and some people are even calling this kind of the meme super cycle, and that could well be true, and it could in fact be true for the same reason that we are seeing behavior like this from XRP, where XRP has basically put in a parabolic advance from the lows and has moved somewhere in the range of sort of 400% in a month basically. And it's very likely that the reason for both memes looking strong and things like XRP having a large advance like that, and also seeing some ridiculous calls for XRP to sort of hit $100, which if you understand market cap, then you understand that XRP with a market cap of $100 would make it much larger than Bitcoin. So XRP at $100 would be the equivalent of Bitcoin at $300, or sorry, $300,000. So what I think this shows is basically newbies coming into space and new retail participants basically coming into the space, which really is what we have been waiting for and what we've been waiting for to start seeing the outsized gains that we want from this stage in the bull market. And this is also shown by Coinbase currently sitting at the 13th most downloaded app in the App Store and the number 1 most downloaded finance app in the App Store. And basically this shows new retail participants coming in who previously didn't have Coinbase but are seeing the price action in the crypto markets and are deciding they want a piece of the action. But interestingly, this is basically a very good risk indicator, and previously each time that Coinbase has reached number 1 in the App App Store has marked a top. And so certainly is something we should be looking out for when we are reaching peak euphoria. And basically the reason that I want to bring this up is because, while we don't know exactly which assets are going to outperform in this bull market, current price action and kind of, relative strength gives us a bit of an indication. And, I will just note that the current price action and relative strength of Casper is looking very strong indeed. And we are not too far away now from all-time highs, being really only 11.5% down from all-time highs, or looking at around about 12 or 13% move until we get back to all-time highs. Relative strength gives us a bit of an indication, but we also know basically what happens during a full market cycle, or at least, we know based on prior cycles. So, new market participants come in because they see price going up and because they feel FOMO and decide that they want a piece of the action for themselves. That basically is why people get involved in crypto, especially really looking at the 2017 and also kind of 2020, 2021 cycles. This very much was a retail driven frenzy. And so while the earlier cycles were kind of more Bitcoin focused only, the market psychology behind them basically is the same. Initially price action starts off as boring and slow, and then it starts to accelerate. And especially what happens is that, a few people have made extremely high gains, those who got in right at the bottom. So they start sort of, telling their friends about it, bragging about it. And then this causes new participants to come in and price to kind of accelerate to the upside. And so, unfortunately, most people end up buying in basically right at the peak or as close to the peak as possible. And then, the amount of price appreciation basically cannot be sustained, and the amount of wealth that has been created in these bull runs basically cannot be sustained. And so eventually the buying pressure turns into selling pressure, and the mania phase basically turns into the fear phase. And that is the story of really any bubble. It starts off slow and then accelerates to the upside and then basically collapses back down. And you can and the basic shape of any bubble is essentially the same. You can go back as far as the tulip bubble or the South Sea bubble, and generally bubbles never resolve back up to the upside and never reach their all-time highs again, especially if you're looking at individual assets like tulips or like the South Sea shipping company. But the key difference with Bitcoin is that, each time it does enter a bubble period and then crash down to the downside, each time it set floor that is higher than the previous floor. And, each time the power law minimum value kind of sets the floor price of Bitcoin. So basically what we are observing here is, the real life and real world adoption and application of a new monetary technology. But really the thing that is driving the adoption of that new technology is greed and people's desire to make a lot of money very quickly. And really that is a major reason why altcoins started becoming much more prevalent and, much more outsized gains post kind of 2017, by the time Bitcoin's market cap was already at a relatively high market cap. And, you're no longer going to be making 1000x on Bitcoin in one cycle. So people venture out to altcoins to try and make those outsized gains during the bull run. So, the point that I'm making here is that these bubble periods is how new people get involved in the space. And, initially they join purely because they want to get rich quick. But hopefully what happens is they stick around during the down phase and actually start to learn about kind of sound money and sound monetary theory. And, many won't, and many will just kind of buy the top and then get wrecked and then claim forever that crypto is a scam and that it's a Ponzi scheme. But those who actually do stick around and understand the principles of sound money and, a deeper understanding of economics is the reason that these bubbles, when they do resolve to the downside, they don't come all the way down to where the bubble started, or at least close to where it started. Instead they set a very new and very well defined floor price. So, the history of crypto and of Bitcoin basically is bubbles driving long-term adoption of a new monetary technology. And that is why the bubbles don't look like this, where they resolve all the way down to where the original floor price actually starts. And so for that reason, it's very likely that we do see meme coins putting in some crazy outside gains. But, eventually what comes up must come down. And what we can hope is that the tourists and the new people who are coming into the space with dreams of getting rich quickly stick around and decide to learn about, sound money and monetary theory and monetary history. And what is the soundest money that currently exists? Previously it was Bitcoin, but now the soundest money that exists is Casper. With Casper not only solving the cryptocurrency trilemma, but also solving the money trilemma and basically perfecting what humans want money to be. And so, when you see, either meme coins that, basically have no real utility and are basically community driven, putting in some crazy multiples, or you see assets which are, arguably very centralized, like, Cardano or something like like Solana doing very well this cycle, then, you know, you need to understand that the majority of the gains coming from these assets are not coming from investors. They are coming from people who basically want to get rich quick and want to get involved in an asset price bubble. But from this, you know, these are the people who are going to then more than likely, you know, get wrecked during this market and hand back any gains that they did make during this market, or, you know, more than likely making a loss. And these are the people who will be then coming in and learning about the principles of sound money and, you know, monetary theory and monetary history. So where is that going to lead? That is going to lead them to Casper, and that is going to lead them to, you know, Casper solving the trilemma and having a very similar story and a very similar launch to Bitcoin, and also Casper being an asset that follows a power law. So, you know, the previous kind of playbook that has happened is, you know, bear markets create Bitcoiners, Bitcoiners create bull markets, and healthy bull markets are led by Bitcoin. And then from that bull market advancing and, you know, people flexing their gains in Bitcoin, that bull market then basically create altcoiners, and those altcoiners then basically go on to make the market too overheated and too frenzied and basically spell the end of the bull market and create bear markets. But the thing is, now that we have Casper, the equation of this may well be somewhat changed, because it's very likely that in the next bear market, when these altcoiners get wrecked and start to do their research on sound money and what actually makes a good money, while, you know, Bitcoin of course will still be a part of that equation, it's very likely that the next bear market will in fact create a lot of Casper converts and Casper believers. So, you know, it's difficult to tell exactly how Casper is going to form in the coming bull run. You know, I've already talked about this on my channel. We don't know whether the power law to the upside will be held, or if we will kind of go into this, you know, parabolic lower top that many people have been advocating for. Either way, there is a huge opportunity coming in the bear market where those people who are either buying Casper to kind of get rich quick, or, you know, buying altcoins and meme coins to get rich quick, well, that is the perfect opportunity to kind of introduce them to the principles of sound money and teach them why Casper actually is an asset like no other, and really, you know, why Casper is the strongest form of money that humans have ever had. So basically, overall, when you see these, you know, arguably ridiculous assets outperforming, and you're seeing, you know, a dog with a hat outperforming the soundest money that humans have ever had, you have to understand that that is just the natural part of the cycle, and that basically will always happen in the bubble period, and that there lies a huge opportunity to educate those who are new in the space once the bubble actually pops, and that, you know, when they do eventually come to learn about hard money and sound money, that will lead them to Casper. So thank you very much for watching. Again, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and also leave a comment letting me know what you think. But other than that, thank you for watching, and until next time, cheers.